Okay, so picking it back up, this is part of integrating, which is what project managers do. We're integrating all of the knowledge areas. You could find that in the PMBOK guide on page 25 if you have a copy of that, or a simple Google search. But I've already kind of talked about the project charter at a high level, but I wanted to give you a one-slide summary. And whenever I say predictive, right, or agile, those are called developmental life cycles. It's how we develop our project. There are many of them. There are many types, but they all kind of center around predictive, or you and I often know it as waterfall project management, which is planned and detailed and yet still progressively elaborated, or agile, which is known as change driven, right? So I make some distinctions, right? Where in the charter is determined once up front for a predictive or waterfall project, and if it changes, you frankly want to probably recommend to your sponsor to terminate the project, right? It's that big a deal. But in agile, it's performed at predetermined points, probably at the beginning of each sprint, for example. And so on the right side is a picture of what we've been talking about, where we have the business documents like the business case, which defines the need that the project was started for, that ties it to strategy. And with it come the benefits requirements, benefits management plan, right? What are you going to get in terms of return on investment? And then you're going to assess feasibility and develop your charter. And you see how in the funnel, it's narrowing it down, still at a high level, because at the bottom of the funnel later, we will build a detailed project plan to produce deliverables. Remember, the project charter should be signed by the sponsor or sponsors. It gives the project manager authority to use resources, and it formally recognizes your project. Here is a picture of what might be in a project charter. It's just meant as an example, nothing that has to be here. Notice for today's conversation, a rough order of magnitude budget, or a ROM budget. Also notice your project name. You want your name along with the sponsor, and then both of you should sign it, right? And notice it's measurable objectives, just like the Golden Gate Bridge example. I could look at the bridge at the end of my project and go, there's 4 lanes each side, there's a bike lane, there's a pedestrian walk lane, etc. Those are measurable, right? And notice the distinctions between a predictive or waterfall project in terms of the development life cycle, where the charter shouldn't change. But in agile, as I mentioned, we could update it at every sprint. Now, moving to cost then, and how does this relate to cost? So cost is really touches on every single knowledge area in the project, right? Notice so predictive projects, as we've talked earlier, are risk focused, right? Looking to control the project and manage risks to minimize them. And so we want to have a conversation about cost risk, which involves all of the constraints, right, that we have about cost, right? And so to minimize this risk, we've been talking about, and we'll talk about cost a lot. So in the charter, we talked moving to the right here, a rough order of magnitude budget, right? And so that's giving us some high-level constraint or a ceiling. In scope management, we talk largely about requirements. And in the work breakdown structure, we actually add numbers called control accounts. And that will help us aggregate our costs back up from the bottom of the work packages. In schedule, we're going to build the schedule, and those activities require resources to get done in a specific amount of time. If I have 2 people to work an activity or 8, it changes how much can get done and how fast, but it also changes your costs, right? In cost management, specifically, I have this budget, which is going to have labor rates and estimations. And I will use tools like PERT, which will help drive down my risk. In quality, I want to talk about terms like the cost of conformance or the cost of non-conformance to reduce that risk. In risk management, we chatted about quantitative analysis and contingency reserves that were related to that. And in contracting or procurement, I'm going to do a make or buy decision and do contract risk management as part of it. Now, the picture at the bottom is meant to show you that what I want to do is get to my cost risks early, right? If I have to implement a cost change later in the project, it costs a lot more, and my ability to influence later on actually drops, right? As the project goes on over time. So to keep costs down with the risk and to ensure maximum influence, I want to assess and manage my costs early and upfront. So this slide is focus on the circle here. This is really just the definition of planning cost management, where we want to estimate, then budget, then finance, and then of course control this approved budget, which we call in project management a cost baseline. So, and the cost baseline becomes this time-phased budget. So first on the right, I'm going to do my rough order of magnitude budget. That would be in the charter. I'm going to assess risks and address contingency reserves, which cost money to address the risk. I'm going to work to fund and finance it. Then I'm going to apply risk management. I'm going to apply a monitoring approach and manage the budget and reserves. And I can use earned value analysis, which is earned value management. That's our approach, which I will discuss here shortly. So this is kind of an overall big picture of what's going on. So when we, in cost management then, I take this iron triangle, which we've been talking about for some time. It's your scope, schedule, and cost baseline. But now I'm turning it into a formula where actual cost, which is the budget, is about the cost variance or cost performance index, CPI, right? And those CV is equal to the earned value minus the actual cost, where CPI, it's an index, it's a division problem, is actually earned value divided by actual cost. So the planned value relates to the schedule, and that's a schedule variance or schedule performance index. That's the work you plan to do. The actual cost is the money you actually spent, and the earned value relates to scope. That's the work that's done. You have built it. You can see the house structure in front of you, right? So the thing about earned value is, which the thing about earned value is a dollar doesn't disappear. Like when you write a check to the kids to go put in some account for the school lunch. It's like, that money's gone. In earned value and project management, the dollar still lives, or whatever currency you're using, still lives. It's just changed form from cash to a structure that has value that you'll sell or move on later. That's the concept behind it. So to do this, then I end up with a budget, right? And so in a predictive project, I end up with this kind of 1 through 7. So starting at the bottom and aggregating the costs up or adding them up, right? Project managers often use the term aggregation. So I want to do activity estimates, and that's in the schedule, and those roll up into the work packages, which is scope management focused. And that's where I applied my control accounts, those numbers that we talked about in the work packages during the work breakdown structure conversation in scope management. So I have the activity estimates from the schedule. Those roll up into the work packages of scope management and my WBS. I add my contingency reserves, which I determined in schedule and cost management, but it's really a risk management tool, right? And it's about applying quantitative analysis and planned responses in risk management. That's where I get my contingency reserves. You, as a project manager, own the contingency reserves. As you recall from the risk discussion, This is about known unknowns, right? You've identified the risk, so you know it's out there, but the definition of a risk is an uncertainty. So you don't know if the risk will happen. And these are your contingency reserves. You'll add those up through your project estimates, and bam, you end up at a cost baseline. That's the budget you control, right? And it's your money. On top of that will be management reserves. You don't own it. You don't even know it exists. Your manager likely sets something aside for unknown unknowns. We didn't identify the risk, so we did not see it coming. And then at the top of that, the term project management uses is the project funding requirements, which includes all of it. So the baseline is you, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Add those up, you get the baseline. All of them is called the project funding requirements. Now in Agile, you want to maybe track funding by a burn rate, right? A burn down chart. And so velocity is used to create the project schedule using story estimates. And cost estimates are often extrapolated out during the process. Okay. Now, then last but not least, I just wanted to spend a minute or two on earned value management, right? So I said the concept is that I am using the iron triangle, all these baselines that I've been talking about, scope, schedule, cost, and now I'm turning it into math formulas that I can use. And so I'm using earned value analysis to create this earned value management approach. And so I have this system to assess the project work and the progress of the performance measurement baseline, right? And this is going to result in work performance information. That's data that I've analyzed and now becomes useful information that I can make decisions on. The concept, as I mentioned, is that a dollar spent isn't just gone from the checkbook, but it lives in the project itself, in the output, right? So the dollar still is alive. And it integrates earned value, which is scope, and planned value, which is schedule, and actual cost, which is cost. So, so these are the definitions. Planned value is the authorized budget, and this applies to your schedule. This is the work to be done in your schedule, right? And it's known as PV. At the beginning of the project, it's also equivalent to budget at completion, right? What I plan to do is what I plan my budget to be when I'm done. That they tie together. Now, earned value is the value of the work that is performed in terms of the budget, right? So earned value is work done already. So if I plan to build the frame of the house or the frame of the house, and if I see a frame of the house there, that's earned value, right? The money is gone. So notice the next one. Those are the costs incurred. I incurred costs to build it, to buy the lumber, etc. That money's gone, but it's not really. In the mathematical equation, it exists now in earned value, right? So it's still there. Okay, that was a great conversation. I enjoyed it. Be sure to do the reading this week, and I'll see you online.